It's going.
All right. It's going.
Media Day is going.
Or in the stretch run of Media Day here. It's in the last moments. You've been here since probably early on when the women got rolling. How's the day been for you so far?
Yeah, it's been good. A day like this brings me a lot of joy because you get to see the student athletes, both men and women, cycle through, the various stations and get to interact with one another, which is a nice way to start the season, including the coaches who, aren't usually in one place at one time. So it's just a great day, a special day.
Yeah, when we were getting going, like kind of likened it to like it's the first day of school. Like everyone gets to see each other. Like the uniforms are all nice and clean. Like everyone's dressed up. Everyone's ready to go. And
no coaches meeting.
No coaches meeting. Yeah, but it's kind of nice seeing the athletes in their uniforms, which provides, I think, a little bit different level of context. When you're watching your podcast or others, people know who they are, but where they're from, and that's kind of nice.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, like in this setting, like we're also kind of at a best stage. Like this is the last year we're going to see it, at least in this format, because 3 of these teams won't be with us come next season: Gonzaga, Oregon State, Washington State. And thinking about what this is going to look like moving forward, even let's just like let's start with like the year as it going to be the last year with them, and how special or like kind of celebratory it's going to be to kind of, I don't know if it's how much it's going to be honoring Gonzaga, like how much they've meant to the conference as they head out. Obviously, there's going to be some like mixed feelings about them leaving and everything else, but the fact that like they've been such a good steward to the WCC, and how do you think that's going to continue to be shown as we get closer and closer to the end of this calendar year or the academic calendar year?
My feelings and the conference office echoes that. They're not mixed feelings. We are just extremely grateful for what Oregon State, Washington State have brought to this conference, and we are deeply appreciative of what Gonzaga has meant to this conference over the past decades. So we will enjoy them while they're still here. At the end of the day, they're going to produce, I think, one of the most exciting conference seasons that we've seen in recent history, judging by the quality of the rosters from top to bottom, which I think have improved since last year, is only going to bring about, competitive play. And hopefully that each of the institutions helps the other and lifts, the tide so that we can continue to be a multi-bid league in the NCAA tournament.
Why was it so important for you personally to kind of take that position? Everyone has a different point of view on how things can go, how things should go. Why was it important for you in your collaboration with people in the conference office to take that stance?
Well, because, listen, you can embrace change or you cannot embrace change. And we tend to embrace it and figure out how we can enhance everybody that's a part of an effort that's bigger than any one individual of us. So that's why, stay in the moment. What's going to happen in the future will happen. We'll continue to thrive as a conference. We want to get to 12 members at some point. Currently, the way it stands next year, we're only going to be at 9, and then the year after that, 10, but we'd like to get to 12. So we'll be fine.
Part of what I've noticed over the course of the last few days, was the rebrand to We Rise in the West. Can you walk us through the process of developing that strategy and kind of the message and the mission that you're trying to illustrate in terms of that branding?
Yeah, it has a lot to do with the fact that after this year, we're going to enter a new era, and we wanted to make sure that we got out ahead of that era, telling our story and just reaffirming, doubling down on who the West Coast Conference is, what we stand for, who we are, and what it means to not only college basketball, but sports fans in general. So, listen, we want to lean into being a regional conference. We want to embrace change and the innovation that comes with it. We want to make sure that we, again, focus on the main thing being the main thing, and that is our student athletes and their wellness, and at the same time maintain the level of excellence. Hence the acronym RISE, we rise in the West. It was a internal process, a fun process, but I think we landed in the right place as a relaunch of a brand for this conference.
Part of that storytelling, as you mentioned, revolves around a media deal, obviously, to the extent that you can share. And obviously, we don't want to get in the room on the negotiations unless you want Zach and I to help negotiate. That is, but to the extent that you can share, what is the kind of the media deal negotiations kind of been going like, and kind of where do you think you stand in terms of trying to etch out the best thing for the West Coast Conference?
Well, thus far we've had no negotiations with either one of our broadcast partners thus far. If I had to speculate, they'll begin in earnest after the new year. And, you know, ESPN and CBS have been outstanding partners for the West Coast Conference. Our hope is that we continue to, increase our reach. So we look forward to those talks.
Now, one of the things we were starting to talk about right as you were hopping on was the idea of who steps up into like the idea of like what Gonzaga was. Like obviously no one school is going to be able to replace what Gonzaga was to this conference. So it's likely a collection of like different programs or different departments that are going to kind of step into that. And just kind of thinking of like what the job and the work that USF has done over the last decade plus, like what Santa Clara has done. Even like on the non-basketball front, looking at other programs like Portland, what they've done for soccer and whatnot. Like, because it feels like that for me, at least in the short term, like that's really the opportunity with Gonzaga stepping out. It's really the opportunity for some of the others to kind of like have like kind of take the horse by the reins right now, because there is a little bit of an opening, because I know like at least some fans and everything without Gonzaga, they have a little bit more of a chance to potentially rise up and maybe get to the tournament themselves.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. And listen, Gonzaga has been the gold standard bearer. But being the gold standard, it's sent a message to the rest of our institution of what could be, and provided a roadmap on how you do it through investment, great management. You too can be a Gonzaga-like institution. And I think we've seen the fruits of that standard, and it's going to be on full display this year. You know, St. Mary's is obviously going to be terrific again. USF, who has had some success in recent years, once again, I think is poised to take another step up. You know, Santa Clara, who's played consistently, and if they avoid the injuries they have in the past couple of years, could step into that role. So, listen, Gonzaga leaving, what they've left is a legacy of excellence, and it's going to benefit this conference greatly. Now, aside from that, our members need to continue to invest, right? Because that's a key component. And we have to continue to evaluate potential new members into the conference that can help, you know, again, increase that summation of all the parts, because there's not going to be another Gonzaga, you know, in the foreseeable future in the West Coast Conference or any other conference. They're a special brand in that regard.
Yeah, they are one of one. Like there is,
yeah.
The way they were able to do it in the conference, they were able to do it. Yeah, it's like there is no duplicate anywhere else. But now you talk about like new members. Seattle's now about let's see, it's about 4 or 5 months now into their first go through the WCC. How has like that continued to grow? Like how have those relationships been over now that they've been able to kind of get their feet wet and are starting to hit the ground running in the conference?
Yeah, Seattle fits like a glove. I mean, their inclusion in our conference is just a signal that they're back where they should be. They've embraced it, of being competitive across all sports. I suspect during the basketball season, on the men's side, that Coach Victor will have them right in the thick of things. Having some returning players from last year's roster. So it's just been a good start to, I think, a long-lasting relationship.
The uniforms look pretty good too. The little redesign that they did,
yeah.
Any WCC uniforms?
Yeah, WCC.
Yeah. But I mean, like thinking about this conference now, again, we're talking about like just the kind of where this conference can go. We know right now there's only we have 1 year left at the Orleans. Are certain the the negotiations for the Orleans again, or where kind of does that stand as far as like the conference tournament goes?
Yeah, no, we have one more year, as you mentioned, at the Orleans. We have an option for yet another year. We need to notify them, I believe, by April or so. We continue to make that evaluation. We haven't made a decision yet, but Orleans has been a terrific partner for this conference, and we'll have to weigh that heavily.
You've been very consistent that basketball will be the decision-making driving force of this conference. Have you kind of seen basketball kind of almost serve as the trickle-down effect to other sports? I know Zach mentioned the soccer. I've seen tennis be very successful. We've seen different other iterations like USD baseball previously. How have you seen like the success of basketball kind of trickle down into the other sports within this conference and success for your members?
I don't think the trickle down is necessarily needed. I think the characteristic of this conference that really makes it special is our traditional success and level of excellence in other Olympic sports. I mean, you look at over the years how we performed in the soccers, in tennis, in golf. That's not by accident. That's because those programs at those respective institutions have managed themselves to a top level the way that basketball has. And I think if we can continue to excel in basketball, it's just going to enhance the conference even greater because they're performing at a very high level in many of those Olympic sports.
When you look at the goals for the conference this year, what comes to mind in terms of what you guys are trying to execute, whether that be from a social standpoint, from a marketing standpoint, from a actual sport product standpoint? What are some of those goals that you have just for this specific academic year?
Well, we've gotten a head start with the relaunch of the brand, from both a social standpoint and a branding standpoint. But my expectation is that we just methodically continue to improve, both at the conference level and the institutional level, and the rest will take care of itself.
Then the last basketball related question I have, obviously you have experience on the D1 basketball committee and all the choices and the metrics and how the team kind of helps you formulate the positions that you take. What was the most surprising thing now that you've kind of had a chance to do it, sit on it, and kind of learn to adjust yourself as you go? What was the most surprising thing about that whole process?
How difficult it really is, particularly when you get down to the teams that are, quote, on the bubble. Because many of those teams, while they're good teams, metrically and from a performance standpoint, perhaps their metrics don't measure up and they've had inconsistent performance. And then as a committee member, you've got to vote on the team or teams that get into the tournament. And that's a difficult process. It highlights the fact that when you're one of the 12 committee members, your vote really does count. And it's pretty serious stuff because it could mean, financial gains for an institution. It could mean the livelihood, of coaches and staffs. So it's something that, we take very seriously.
And on the tournament front of just the news, like about like the potential expansion of the tournament and whatnot, where of what you can't say, like where is that, or like what do you think it's like is, because I keep thinking like to the 76 of like I keep thinking like it's just going to end up being more of the Power Four teams that end up in there rather than probably some of the other mid-major teams. And so how does the conversation maybe like that kind of balance out when it comes to those extra teams potentially in the tournament?
Yeah, no, I think expansion, at least in my mind, is a good thing as long as they continue to, as you say, to provide access to, all institutions and conferences across the country. And expansion makes sense as long as they don't compromise the basketball performance fund or the unit, going forward when they do expand. So as long as they accomplish those two objectives, I'm for it. In terms of mid-major teams getting more access to the tournament, you've got to perform.
Yeah.
You got to schedule, you got to perform, and the rest will take care of itself.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks a lot, Stu, for hopping on. It's great to have a few minutes with you to get the chats, some of the particulars of what the conference is up to, and then we'll definitely catch up with you at some point.
All right.